My friend, there is a mystery, a shadow, a pattern that stretches across time and across nations. It concerns the chosen one from the beginning. God has chosen vessels. Abraham, Moses, David, the prophets, the apostles. Each was called for a destiny, yet with every chosen one, there arose a counterforce, a darkness, a cover-up. The Pharaoh sought to strike down Moses. Jezebel sought to silence Elijah. Herod sought to destroy the infants, to prevent Messiah's coming. The adversary never sits idle when God appoints a mission. For every calling, there is a contest. For every anointing, there is an attack. This is the mystery. The greater the Chosenness, the greater the warfare. And so it is not only in ancient days, it is now. Look at the world around us. When God raises up a servant, a leader, a witness, the enemy orchestrates a covering, a corruption, a hidden darkness. It can be scandal, deception, compromise, or the whispers of accusation. It can be hidden hands moving behind the scenes to cover truth with lies. But the pattern remains: the chosen one and the counterforce, the mantle and the battle. Do not think it strange when those set apart by God are suddenly surrounded by storms. Do not be surprised when those who carry His word are targeted for slander, or when truth is buried beneath layers of concealment. For the mystery declares, wherever there is chosenness, there will be opposition. And yet, the cover-up cannot stand. Pharaoh's plots failed. Jezebel fell. Herod's scheme did not stop the Messiah. Every attempt to extinguish the light was overturned by the very hand of God. So the call is this: do not be deceived by appearances. Do not stumble when you see chosen ones under attack or cloaked in shadow. Instead, discern, pray, stand, and remember that behind the cover-up, behind the darkness, God is still at work. For the chosen one is not chosen by man, nor sustained by man, but by the eternal will of the Almighty. And when the darkness rises, it is only a sign that the light is about to break forth. The mystery of the chosen runs deeper than most realize. From the beginning of time, the Eternal has set apart men and women for purposes greater than themselves. To be chosen is to be marked, to be separated, to be appointed for a destiny that stretches beyond the confines of ordinary life. Abraham was called out from his homeland, from the comfort of the familiar, to journey into the unknown. Moses was called from the wilderness, from obscurity, to stand before Pharaoh with the voice of God. David was taken from the fields, from tending sheep, to wear the crown of Israel. Each was chosen, and in their chosenness lay both promise and peril. To be chosen is to walk a narrow road. It is not the road of ease, but the path of testing. For with chosenness comes not only blessing, but also the weight of responsibility. The chosen one is not free to live as others live, to blend into the flow of the world. The chosen one is called to stand apart, to hear what others do not hear, to carry what others cannot bear. And because of that, the chosen one becomes a target. The same hand that anoints also marks. The mantle of destiny is also a mantle of warfare. It is no accident that when God raises up a vessel, the forces of darkness rise as well. The adversary knows that if he can strike down the chosen, he can disrupt the mission. That is why Pharaoh rose up to destroy the Hebrew infants, seeking to cut off Moses before he could even draw breath into his calling. That is why Saul, tormented and jealous, sought David's life with relentless fury. That is why Herod decreed the massacre of Bethlehem's children in a desperate attempt to prevent the coming of Messiah. The mystery is clear. Chosenness and opposition are two sides of the same coin. Many wonder why those set apart by God often endure storms, afflictions, accusations, or betrayals. They see the struggle and conclude that perhaps the calling has failed or that God's hand has been withdrawn. Yet it is the opposite. The storm is not a sign of abandonment but of appointment. The tempest gathers because the vessel carries something precious. The chosen one bears the seed of destiny, and the enemy moves with all his might to destroy it before it can come to fruition. This is the paradox. The more significant the calling, the fiercer the battle. Chosenness is not a shield against hardship, but an invitation into it. The chosen are not those spared from the valley, but those who walk through it carrying the presence of God. They are not those without wounds, but those whose scars testify to endurance. To be chosen is to be entrusted with both glory and pain, with both promise and fire. And yet, the mystery does not end with struggle. For though the chosen are struck, they are not destroyed. Though they are pressed, they are not crushed. Moses lived to stand before Pharaoh. David lived to reign in Jerusalem. Messiah came forth despite Herod's schemes. The opposition could not overcome the ordination. The cover-up could not extinguish the light. The chosen one stands not by his own strength, but by the hand of the Almighty, and that hand cannot fail. So, the mystery of the chosen is not merely about destiny, but about conflict. It is about the clash between light and darkness, between heaven's purpose and hell's resistance. And it is also about triumph. For the darkness is permitted only to reveal the greater light. The chosen one is proof that God's word cannot return void, his plan cannot be overturned, and his call cannot be silenced. To be chosen is to live in that tension, but also to witness the faithfulness of the one who calls. With every calling comes a shadow, and with every chosenness comes a battle. The moment God sets apart a vessel, the adversary sets his eyes upon that vessel. This is the mystery of opposition, the unseen law of the Spirit. The greater the light, the greater the resistance. It is no coincidence that Pharaoh's rage erupted at the very time Moses was born. It was no accident that Jezebel's fury was directed at Elijah as he confronted the altars of Baal. It was no random event when Herod, shaken by the news of a newborn king, unleashed a decree of slaughter. The enemy recognizes what many cannot see, that within the chosen lies a spark that could ignite a nation, a word that could shatter deception, a mission that could change history. And because of this, he moves quickly, decisively, ruthlessly. The chosen one is not opposed because of weakness, but because of strength. The darkness does not fight what does not threaten it. It does not wage war against emptiness. It wages war against destiny. When the enemy perceives that a soul carries the imprint of heaven's call, he releases his arsenal to suffocate, to intimidate, to silence. That is why some of the fiercest battles are fought not in the lives of the ungodly, but in the lives of those who have been set apart. For where there is chosenness, there will be warfare. Consider Elijah. He was a man of fire, one who called down the presence of God on Mount Carmel. Yet immediately afterward, Jezebel's threats drove him into despair and isolation. How is it that a prophet who stood against hundreds of false priests would flee from one woman's words? It was not natural. It was supernatural. The opposition he faced was not merely human. It was the spirit of darkness rising up against the anointed one of God. The same truth appears in the life of David. He was chosen by God in secret, anointed with oil. Yet soon after he was pursued by spears and hunted like prey. Saul's hatred was not only born of jealousy, it was fueled by the spiritual opposition to David's destiny. For the throne of Israel could not be filled without resistance, because the line of David was to bring forth Messiah. To strike David was to attempt to strike the promise of salvation. So it is with all who are chosen. Opposition is the seal of chosenness. The shadow testifies to the presence of light, and often the intensity of the battle reveals the significance of the calling. The greater the chosenness, the darker the opposition. Yet opposition is also revelation. It unmasks the hidden forces that fear the rise of God's purpose. It shows that behind earthly conflict lies a spiritual struggle. This is why the chosen must discern. For if one looks only at the surface, the battle seems unjust, cruel, and senseless. But when seen in the Spirit, it is revealed as the proof of a higher appointment. And the story never ends with opposition alone. Pharaoh's heart hardened, but in the end he fell beneath the waves. Jezebel threatened, but in the end she was cast down. Herod slaughtered, but the Messiah lived, died, and rose again. The opposition was real, fierce, and deadly, but it could not prevail. For the purposes of God are not fragile. They are unstoppable. They move through storms, through hatred, through schemes, and come forth victorious. Therefore, the chosen must not despair when the opposition rises. They must not surrender when the shadow looms large. For the very presence of the battle is the sign of their appointment. The chosen one is not abandoned in the struggle. The chosen one is accompanied by the power of the Almighty. And in the end, the opposition, no matter how dark, must bow before the one who chose. The workings of darkness are seldom in the open. Rarely does the enemy strike in ways that are obvious to the eye. Instead, he weaves his schemes through layers of concealment, deception, and disguise. This is the mystery of the cover up. What is holy is hidden beneath rumors. What is true is buried beneath lies. What is pure is wrapped in accusation. And the chosen, who carry the imprint of God's call, often find themselves caught in the midst of such shadows. From the beginning, the enemy has operated not only by destruction, but by distortion. In Eden, the serpent did not come with a sword, but with a question, a twist, a lie that concealed itself as wisdom. In the wilderness, the adversary came to the Messiah not with violence, but with scripture misused, words bent to cloak falsehood in the appearance of truth. The cover up is the weapon of choice when brute force cannot prevail. If the chosen cannot be slain, then they must be discredited. If the mission cannot be stopped, then it must be hidden under a veil of doubt and suspicion. The pattern plays out across the ages. When Joseph was chosen to dream dreams of heaven, his brothers covered him in falsehood. They dipped his robe in blood, presenting to their father a lie that concealed Joseph's destiny. When Jeremiah spoke the word of the Lord, others rose up to declare him a false prophet, attempting to bury the truth under accusations. Even the Messiah, the very embodiment of truth, was accused of being a deceiver, a blasphemer, a lawbreaker. At every turn, the light was cloaked in the garments of darkness, so that men would not recognize what stood before them. So it is in every generation. The chosen one will often be surrounded not only by open enemies, but by rumors, slanders, misunderstandings, and the twisting of truth. What is of God will be presented as dangerous, controversial, or suspect. The enemy knows that if he can cloud the perception of the chosen, he can weaken the impact of their mission. And so the cover up becomes a battlefield of perception, fought not only in actions, but in words, in whispers, in hidden currents of suspicion. This is why discernment is critical. For many fall when they see the chosen shrouded in controversy, or when they hear accusations without understanding the deeper mystery. They judge by appearances, and in doing so they miss the reality. They believe the cover up instead of seeking the truth. Yet the scriptures warn that man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. To see beyond the cover up is to look with the eyes of the Spirit, not the eyes of flesh. But here too lies hope. For though the enemy covers, God uncovers. Though the darkness hides, the light reveals. The robe of Joseph was stained with blood, yet the truth of his exaltation could not remain hidden. Jeremiah was mocked, but his words endured when the voices of his accusers were silenced. The Messiah was nailed to a cross in shame, yet the stone was rolled away, and the truth of his resurrection broke forth for all the world to see. Every cover-up, no matter how thick, is destined to be torn away when the appointed time comes. The cover-up is but a temporary shadow. It is allowed for a season, but it cannot remain forever. For the Lord is a God who reveals, who brings hidden things to light, who exposes what lies in darkness. And so those who are chosen must not falter when surrounded by misunderstanding or lies. Instead, they must stand firm, knowing that the one who chose them will also vindicate them. The truth may be veiled for a moment, but it will be unveiled in the end, and the light will shine brighter because it was once concealed. When storms gather around a life, when accusations arise, when trials descend like waves upon the soul, many ask why. Why should one chosen of God face such fire? Should not the favor of the Almighty shield his servant from hardship? Yet the mystery is that the very storms themselves are signs, not of rejection, but of election. The opposition does not come because the chosen one has strayed from the path, but because the chosen one is on the path. The presence of warfare is the mark of chosenness. It is written that the thief does not break into an empty house. He targets only what contains treasure. In the same way, the adversary does not waste his weapons on those who carry nothing of heaven's value. He reserves his fiercest attacks for those who bear the weight of divine purpose. Thus, when storms rise against the chosen, it is evidence that there is something within them that threatens the kingdom of darkness. The warfare reveals the worth. The trial testifies to the treasure. This is why the prophets endured relentless persecution. Jeremiah was thrown into a pit. Isaiah was sawn in two. Elijah fled into the wilderness. They were not hunted because they were failures, but because they were faithful. Their lives carried words that shook kingdoms, and so the kingdoms of darkness shook back. The fury of their opposition was the seal of their appointment. The same pattern is seen in the life of Messiah. He was hated without cause, opposed by leaders, betrayed by friends, accused falsely, and condemned unjustly. He was the chosen one above all others, and therefore he bore the fiercest storm. Yet even this storm was not a sign of weakness, but of divine purpose. For it was through that storm, the cross, that redemption came to the world. The fiercest battle gave birth to the greatest victory. So when the chosen find themselves surrounded by shadows, when they feel the arrows of accusation or the weight of adversity, they must remember the mystery. The storm is not the end. It is a signpost pointing to the significance of their calling. The storm rages precisely because the vessel carries something that must be stopped, something the enemy fears, something that threatens to break chains and bring light into darkness. And here lies another truth: the storm, though fierce, cannot prevail. The chosen one stands not by human strength, but by divine appointment. Pharaoh pursued Moses, yet Moses led his people through the sea. Saul chased David, yet David sat upon the throne. The Sanhedrin condemned Messiah, yet he rose from the grave. The storm comes with fury, but the hand of God comes with greater power. The chosen must therefore learn to see differently. They must not interpret the storm as a sign of abandonment, but as confirmation. They must not let opposition drive them to despair, but allow it to awaken them to the magnitude of their calling. For if the enemy invests such effort in their downfall, it is because heaven has invested even more in their destiny. And in the end, the storm itself becomes part of the testimony. The waves that threaten to drown become the backdrop for the miracle of walking upon the water. The fire that was meant to destroy becomes the furnace in which faith is purified. The chosen one emerges not weaker, but stronger, not silenced, but with a voice refined like gold. The storm that came to end the mission becomes the very thing that proves it. So the mystery declares the greater the chosenness, the greater the warfare. But it also declares that the greater the warfare, the greater the victory. For the chosen are not chosen to be defeated, but to overcome. And the storm, no matter how fierce, is but the prelude to the triumph that is coming. The mystery of chosenness is not confined to the pages of ancient scripture. It is a pattern that repeats itself across the span of history. What happened in the days of Moses, Elijah, David, and Messiah is not locked away in the past. The forces that rose against them still move in our world, and the same conflict between light and darkness continues in every generation. The chosen ones of old were opposed, and so too the chosen ones of today will find themselves in the same struggle. The pattern is eternal, for the adversary does not change his nature, and the hand of God does not change his ways. Look at the chronicles of time. In every age, when God raised up a man or woman to lead his people, a shadow rose as well. In the days of the early church, the apostles carried the gospel into the world, but they faced prison cells, beatings, and martyrdom. The Roman Empire sought to silence them, to crush the seed before it could grow into a tree. Yet the blood of the martyrs became the seed of the church, and what was meant to extinguish the flame only spread the fire. The pattern was the same: chosenness, followed by opposition, followed by triumph. Centuries later, voices rose again. Reformers who dared to speak truth against corruption were branded as heretics, hunted, and sometimes burned at the stake. Why? Because they carried a word that threatened the powers of darkness disguised in religious robes. The chosen were opposed, slandered, and attacked. Yet their message endured. Once again, the pattern revealed itself. Destiny contested by darkness, but ultimately prevailing. The pattern is not confined to distant centuries. Even in modern times, when a servant of God rises to call a nation back to righteousness, they are often met with ridicule, hatred, or attempts to discredit their message. The cultural powers of the age rise up to suppress the voice, to cover the truth, to silence the chosen. Yet behind it all is the same ancient conflict, the same warfare that raged on Sinai, in Jerusalem, and on Calvary. The names may change, the settings may shift, but the spirit of opposition remains the same. This should not surprise us. For if the scriptures declare that there is nothing new under the sun, then the struggles of the chosen will also return again and again. What happened then is a shadow of what happens now, and what happens now is a continuation of what was written long ago. The chosen must understand that their story is not an isolated one, but part of a great continuum. They stand in the line of Abraham, of Joseph, of Daniel, of Paul. Their trials are echoes of ancient trials, and their victories are foretastes of eternal triumph. But there is another side to the mystery. The repetition of the pattern is also a sign of hope. For if every chosen one has faced opposition, and yet God has always brought them through, then those who are chosen now can be assured of the same. Pharaoh fell, Jezebel fell, the Sanhedrin schemes failed, Rome collapsed, and every power that rose against the chosen was broken. The pattern assures us that the same end awaits every opposition in our day. The darkness may rage, but it cannot endure. The cover-ups may spread, but they cannot last. The storms may roar, but they will pass, and the chosen will remain standing by the strength of the Almighty. Therefore, to see the pattern is to gain perspective. The chosen one need not despair when the battle intensifies. They need only to remember that they are part of a mystery older than time itself. The enemy opposes because he knows what is at stake. But God allows the pattern because he knows the victory that lies ahead. The story is written, The outcome is assured, and the chosen will see the faithfulness of the one who never changes. Darkness rises, but light rises higher. The mystery of the chosen does not end in the struggle, nor in the cover-up, nor in the storm. The final word belongs not to opposition, but to triumph. Every attempt of the adversary to silence, to destroy, or to conceal only sets the stage for the unveiling of God's power. For the purposes of the Almighty cannot be undone, and the destiny of the chosen cannot be erased. What Pharaoh sought to drown was lifted from the water and became a deliverer. What Jezebel sought to silence thundered louder across the ages. What Herod sought to prevent became the salvation of the world. In every case, the enemy's schemes collapsed, and the triumph of light was revealed. The triumph of light is not always immediate, nor is it always visible in the moment. To the eyes of man, it may seem that darkness has prevailed. Joseph, betrayed and imprisoned, appeared defeated. Daniel, thrown into the den of lions, seemed abandoned. Messiah, nailed to the cross, looked overcome. But appearances deceive, and the cover of night cannot stop the dawn. Joseph's prison became the path to Egypt's throne. Daniel's den became the setting for a miracle that glorified the God of Israel before kings. Messiah's cross became the very instrument of redemption, and his tomb was open to reveal a risen Lord. The triumph was hidden in the very place where defeat was expected. This is the mystery. God takes what was meant for harm and turns it for good. He takes the weapons of the enemy and forges them into testimonies of victory. The chosen walk through valleys not to be consumed, but to emerge with a song that could not be sung without the trial. The scars of the battle become the proof of their calling, the evidence that they stood when others fell, that they endured when others surrendered. And through their endurance, light breaks forth where darkness once reigned. The triumph of light is not only for the chosen, but for all who behold. When Moses led the people through the sea, it was not only his victory, but the salvation of a nation. When David triumphed over Goliath, the fear of Israel was shattered, and courage rose in the hearts of thousands. When Messiah rose from the grave, it was not only his vindication, but the opening of eternity to all who believe. The chosen carry within their victory the seeds of deliverance for others. Their triumph is never solitary, but always multiplied. And so, the chosen must walk with endurance, knowing that the darkness they face is not permanent, but passing. The shadow is real, but it cannot remain. The lies may spread, but truth will rise. The storm may roar, but it will break upon the rock of God's faithfulness. The triumph of light is inevitable, for the light is not human but divine, not temporal but eternal. No cover up can outlast the unveiling of the Almighty. No opposition can withstand the decree of heaven. This is why the chosen must not fear. Their path may lead through the wilderness, through the furnace, through the pit, or even through the cross. But every wilderness has its promised land, every furnace its fourth man, every pit its lifting, and every cross its resurrection. The pattern is unbreakable, for it is woven into the fabric of creation itself. Darkness may have its hour, but light has eternity. So the message to the chosen is this: stand firm. Do not let the storm deceive you. Do not let the cover up dishearten you. Do not let the opposition define you. For the very fact that you are opposed is proof that you are chosen, and the very fact that you are chosen is proof that you will overcome. The triumph of light is certain, and the one who has called you is faithful. What begins in struggle will end in glory, and what is hidden in shadow will be revealed in brilliance. The chosen cannot be defeated, for their victory is written in the hands of the eternal.